Heyo, welcome to the Industry Idiots podcast. Turns out that you're listening to last week's episode. You can listen to today's episode if you head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/industryidiots. For supporting, you'll get it a week early and access to one Patreon exclusive episode each month. Either way, thank you and enjoy this episode. Bye!
Hello, new episode with a special surprise today.
Yeah, welcome to the Industry Idiots LevelDesignLobby crossover episode. Please welcome to the show author of the new Let's Design Combat, a level design series book, host of the terrifically insightful LevelDesignLobby podcast, professional level designer at CD Projekt RED, and good friend of the show, Max Pears.
Hey. Thank you, guys.
Really glad to have you, man.
Yeah, no, it's great to be here, and thank you for the fantastic introduction as well, boys. I feel I'm going to try live up to the hype. So yeah.
So I'm just glad you're here. How have you been? How's life in Poland? I suppose.
Yeah, it's it's crazy times for us all. I think still going through. You guys who are listening to us can't see, but myself and the boys here can see my crazy long COVID hair. So it's I'm going through my emo phase all over again with this length of hair. So, but no, it's all good, boys, all good. How about yourselves? How are you guys doing over in the great land of Germany?
Actually, in Germany, it's pretty relaxed right now. A lot of the COVID stuff is not really touching us that much anymore. The regulations have been lifted for the most part and stuff. So I've just been running today. I've been outside doing some exercise.
All right, someone likes to show off, don't they? Here they are, trying to make us feel bad. This guy's on it already, just killing it in the run.
Yep. Yeah, Sven is all about that healthy living.
And then went to a cafe, had some coffee and stuff just the usual.
Come on, you had cake. Be honest.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I've been doing fine as well. I mean, we're holding up, having a lot of work going on, of course, and staying at home still. We're still working from home and totally. Are you still working from home as well?
Yeah, we are. So yeah, it's. I mean, honestly, it's not that bad in Poland. I think anyone who's seeing it, there seems to be a second wave coming. What happened in Beijing and Spain right now, parts of the UK as well. So it's just everyone's just trying to keep safe at the end of the day, and I think I'm also a little bit paranoid too. So we'll see if anyone comes within a meter length. I'm like, yeah, get away.
I feel you.
Amount of old ladies that have come near me, I'm like, this is for your safety, not mine. Look after them.
Punch COVID in the face.
Max, the other day I was chatting with Shane Canning from Square Enix.
Oh, awesome.
About relocation to Japan, because you relocated to Japan, right?
Yeah.
And that sounded really, really cool. And I wanted to ask you, how was your general relocation shizzle going on to Poland? I think people will be really interested in that.
Yeah, I feel kind of bad because he's got Poland's a great country, just for the record, for anyone who thinks I'm bad-mouthing it. Just Japan's a lot more exotic, that's all. So curse you, Shane, for besting me. But no, it was a good one. CD Projekt RED have been really, really helpful with the relocation. Honestly, they helped a lot, booked everything, really great with communication all the way through. And I think, as you guys know, as 3 Europeans here, is that a lot of European cultures very similar. There are differences for sure, but overall it's very similar, compared to what Shane's going through over in Japan, which is a huge culture shock. But to me, I've been here coming up it'll be 4 years at the end of this year. So I've been here for a while, and I'm having a great time. It's a beautiful place. The weather's much better than I thought it was going to be, so that's good. I'm not freezing to death in the winter. But no, it's absolutely beautiful. Obviously, there's a lot of history as well with Poland, so for me, that's always fun to learn about. And no, the process was good. I still don't speak the language, so przepraszam to any Polish listeners there, because it is a really hard language. And I'm sure even when I said that then, someone's going to be like, that wasn't good enough. You failed us.
You've been there for 4 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that actually a requirement when you had to move over?
No, luckily, the studio speaks, multiple different languages. There's people all the way from around the world there as well. So it's all good. And luckily, Poland as a place itself, a lot of people speak English. So it's been, fortunate for me, and a very easy transition. And like I said, everything's been great there. Honestly, it's really fun to live here, and I'm happy I've had the opportunity to move abroad as well, because just sometimes you just never with games growing, as you guys know, all the time, you never know what opportunities you're going to get and how far it's going to take you. And very fortunate to be able to go travel the world while doing the thing that I love, So it's been an absolute blast. It really has.
How was the visa thing? Because I talked the other day to some companies in the States, and the current H-1B situation, their visa, right? Like, you cannot get into the country in the next 4 years, even with company endorsement. So that was really crazy.
Yeah, I know that's really strange to hear because of the amount of people that have and do go over to America from all around the world. But for being in Europe, I'm sure it'll change once Brexit kind of kicks into gear, sadly.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
I think I'll have to get like a visa there, So, don't hate me, guys. I voted to stay, honestly, like as much as I don't like you guys, trust me. I was like, no, like stay. This is all European banter for anyone from the States wondering if I just mocked an entire country.
Yep.
It's European banter. I apologize. But no, like for me, it was easy to get over here, like I said, because of the EU. And I'm sure if someone else like yourselves, if you guys moved country as well, it'd be very easy. But the States, I don't know what's happened. Well, I mean, I think it's something to do with obviously Trump and that, but they've kind of restricted it to such an extreme where
Oh yeah, they're even making some students who are studying abroad make them leave the country again and make them go home.
Yeah, it's really crazy.
It's actually insane.
Jesus. Yeah, I mean, I've been to the States 3 times and I had a great time there. Really nice place. I was in Los Angeles and Arkansas. Great time there. But no, like if you're European moving around Europe, it's very easy. It'll be harder for me next year, but right now it's super easy.
So maybe to get away from the COVID things a little bit and more into the design discussion, because we always try to. I know I introduced it, but we always try to stay away from like all the COVID stuff and that kind of shit, so people can zone out.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to bring doom and gloom to the episode. Sorry, guys.
Some drama. Yeah.
Oh man, the question I was having is that I read in your book that one of the biggest problems that you face, or challenges, let's say challenges in the level design, is that players are able to enter your level from all sides. Is that something you found a good solution or plan of action for?
So what we're talking about is I got my upcoming book, everyone who's listening, and this is why these lovely gentlemen have allowed me to come onto the show, because they managed to smooth off a free copy off me, curse their beautiful faces.
But only for the free copy, of course.
They're not even going to read it. They're just going to throw it as a coaster or something. Jesus.
Just skim through it.
Oh, here we go again. Oh, these two are too big time for little old me. But so yes, I'm releasing a book on combat design within levels and talking about the best way to design your combat with level design. It's called Let Design Combat. And depending when this is released, it should be out. If it's not out when this is released, it'll be released at the end of this month, July. So go get yourselves a copy. But to answer your question, my good sir, it's one of the most interesting ones, because the example that I learned this from was the fact that when we were making Underground for the Division, the DLC, it was all procedurally generated. So what you had to do was make like rooms or like sections of the level, and the player could essentially rotate the room each time a new dungeon was generated, multiple ways on 2 different floors, sometimes depending on the section. And it was always kind of difficult to first get your head wrapped around, well, how is it that we let the player understand the navigation of the room? How is it that we make sure that they get a chance to understand where to go, a chance to breathe before they're just thrown straight into combat? So I'd say one of the first things is by giving a player a decision point. And a decision point is a place where the player will enter. They're able to see the enemies, not all of them, but some, and they're able to strategize, plan, and then be able to move forward with it. And it keeps them in a safe place where hopefully the view of the enemies shouldn't spot the player as well. Because I said you want it to be the calm before the storm. So that's one of the best ways that I recommend with that as well. Now, the other thing when you're doing a decision point is making sure that you don't overpower that as well. Because sometimes if it stays really overpowered, the player's never going to leave. And the way that you can do this is obviously make sure there's not much cover. Another example is if you can see through a window, make sure that window is bulletproof, because otherwise, again, they're just going to stay there. So it forces that, or make the enemies move from that spot. So again, it pulls the player in. So there's many different ways to do it, but that is definitely one of the best ways that I can recommend, is make sure that you always give, well, not always, because situational, maybe you want to ambush the player, for example. But if you are looking for the player to kind of go in a bit more planning and a bit more strategic, do offer a decision point for the players to kind of learn from. So that's one of my tips of the day for you all.
And also, I mean, decision points aren't exclusive to level design. Like from a narrative design perspective, to introduce, if you would turn a corner in a video game and then you meet the king of the world and then you have to save him right then and there with no contextual knowledge, right? This decision is not going to feel great for the player. But if he's introduced into the game slowly, learns all the characters, like he gets this virtual figurative decision point and overview point over the story, then I think this is a concept that can work in all aspects of game production anyway. So it's a very good point.
For sure, mate. And that's it. You know, we all take and learn from one another. You know, that's the great thing about games and all mediums.
You mentioned the Division and it's leveled, right? And not the only problem isn't just like entering the level from all sides, but it's also the multiplayer aspect, right? And Sven is building a lot of high quality, I want to say, source maps for CounterStrike and all these kind of games. Maybe we could find, like, where's the overlap, right? What is important in an action multiplayer level design approach?
I think those two are different, because the one is like third person with cover-based stuff, and the other one first person, and you, like, the way you move through the space in Counter-Strike, you don't really have cover in that classic sense.
Yeah.
It's more like the corner picking thing, which is your cover. I think you touch on that in your book with that the door frames and stuff are also functioning as cover. So there might be a little bit overlap in that section, but apart from that, I don't see as much, honestly, because it's also not as much PvP like in a 5 versus 5 thing, right?
Yeah.
Or what's the meat of the Division PvP?
Yeah, no, you're right, mate. There's definitely some major differences, because it's more multiplayer where it's you against an enemy, whereas Counter-Strike, it's player versus player, you know. And so, I mean, you know, building levels, there's all similarities with architecture of the metrics, making sure that the player can see, you know, certain lines of sight, reducing it around different ones, choke points, all of these. But yeah, in terms of like how you lay it out, how you structure it, you're completely right, mate. It's very different, and I don't want to try and be here like, yeah, guys, I can make the best Counter-Strike map ever, because I could not. I can't lie to anyone. So no, but yeah, there's some similarities, and guess, you know, the structure in terms of how we built, but in terms of the design behind it, yeah, I think there's definitely some different thoughts in the method.
I think one overlap could for sure be, that's also one thing you touched on, is like the frontline character of things. But instead of having like NPC enemies, your enemies, of course, are the players. And then you, of course, also establish like this no man's land section, and you have like parts of the maps where the terrorists, of course, have the control until they reach the counter terrorists and stuff. So there might be some similarities, but it's like the general type of like all kinds of warfare you can find out there. It's mostly like this two sides clashing at some point, and then you have the dynamics of that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that there with the player front versus, you know, the enemy front, as you said, is about establishing your lines of combat. If you think of it as something, say, Overwatch, you know, where you each have your starting points depending on the type of map. Maybe you've got the defend and the capture, but you will generally have your first line where you do engage, which is your kind of land, unless you've got, in Overwatch, someone who likes to just stand outside the front door and just mow everyone down, because it's very nice of them. But yeah, as you said, the no man's land is where each of you are trying to battle for. So yeah, there is some of that in terms of strategy as well, but it's, yeah, slightly different games with it. But, you know, the thing about it all is that, you know, like we just said, there may be some big differences, but again, there are stuff definitely for us to all learn from in different ways. You know, like Doom, for example, is one of the most craziest combats in a good sense, but that's very different from Call of Duty or CSGO or Rainbow Six Siege. You know, like you need to nail that down for sure in the early stages. How have you found making Counter-Strike levels and that, mate? Like, how is that for you?
How that happened? How I started doing that? Or
Yeah.
Oh, actually, like my first touching the modding and mapping stuff was way back in 2005. I was like a small boy playing Star Wars Republic Commando, actually.
A wee lad.
And then doing maps for that in Unreal 2.5, I think it was. And then for 2 or 3 years, I didn't spend much time working on that. But at some points, we started with CSGO, and then I wanted to like make own fun maps for it. And then that turned more serious when I then tried to take on bigger projects and constantly overscoping, of course, in the beginning, as we all know it.
Yeah.
That never stops.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's basically the way I found myself into like creating content for games, just making maps and mods generally for existing games. And yeah.
Awesome, man. I would say, like, what is some of the, I guess, the biggest challenges for you then working on something that's more like CSGO? Because the tension with each shot on that is very high.
I mean, for each encounter, yeah, because so meaningful in a sense that when you die, you have to wait for 2 minutes most of the time and have a lot of downtime. So it makes it so more significant that you perform well in a certain part. So having the environment be in the way of your performance would be counterproductive in that sense. So it's all about making like the overall flow of the thing feel good and not be in the way of your personal performance and not stand in the way of the mechanics. So that was one of the challenges, trying to account for all the different types of mechanics that are in there, for all the different kinds of utility and like smoke grenades, molotovs, and provide spots for them, and also don't make them too overpowered, and balancing like 20 or 30 weapons across the map is quite the feat. And then you also have to fill in some areas that are more for like for the pistols, where the pistols can excel, and then areas where the snipers can excel, and you have to cram that all into one map and then make it still realistic. So that's a challenge for sure.
Yeah, it sounds it, man.
I feel like the one thing that you mentioned in your book, the cover buffer, seems to be one of the most important things when it comes to CounterStrike maps, because this, the player being offered a meaningful choice in terms of, do I really want to risk crossing this open field, crossing this door without a smoke in CounterStrike, where the arrow is fatal, like you're dead and then you're out of the game for the entire round. Compared to the other games, I think this is one of the design problems that gets inflated to 10 times the size in games like Counter-Strike or Rainbow Six as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an interesting one, cover buffer in general, because there's so many reasons why that's so important. Like you're saying, for in Counter-Strike, that tension is super high when that cover, especially if it's just, I've forgotten the map. It's the most famous one in Counter-Strike, but when you go through there's like a tunnel, and literally all your cover is on the corner from each entrance of that tunnel. Like, that's a real nerve-wracking moment for the player. So it's really, really important that you establish that really early, because it plays off tension, as you said, meaningful choices too. And also, it's a great way where you can help it by making the player realize how valuable each cover spot is. Because if you start to overcrowd your levels, and you just mentioned there, mate, how you're saying about you're trying to make sure that you've got different best places for your different weapons. But if you start just overloading that with cover, it destroys the line of sight. You're just like, well, I can just zip zag all the way through, and it was zigzag was the phrase I was looking for, and I just messed that up.
I think it had character. It was your own word.
And you can just just take away that tension. So yeah, I think it's establishing that off the get-go for whatever game that you're working on is super important, and then you can start to tweak and just mess around for the best places to have a lot of cover and places to have zero cover. It's all of those play around. It's once you know the rules, that's when you can start to bend them. That's what I think.
And getting to one of your decision points with a big open field, so risk and reward is in equilibrium somehow, balance.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. Sven, what?
Because you touched on like the Division before, I was just wondering if I played the main game, but not any of the DLCs. So unfortunately, I didn't play any of the content. Or did you work on the main game too?
I worked on the main game too. So you're saved now, mate. We're all saved.
Yeah, all right, I'm safe. Because I was wondering, because you mentioned that like the underground thing was procedurally generated, and are those entirely PvE sections, or are there like PvP as well? Because I remember the main PvP stuff was like in this dark zone area, So.
No, so it's so the underground was PvE, and the dark zone. There was a PvP mode, I think, that released. It was the third DLC, but by that time I'd left Ubisoft at that. But I heard it was good, and the dark zone was very good as well. That was done by the team at Red Storm, who did a phenomenal job. with that because it was a very different style of multiplayer, I think, and that was nice for it. But yeah, no, I worked on the open world events as well as working on a few of the different districts. The main ones were, man, why am I forgetting the section that I worked on? This is embarrassing. Turtle Bay, that was the one. It was one of the last sections in the main game. And I worked a little bit on different places as well, a bit here and there. Say, for example, Gramercy, Flatiron, Kips Bay. But, main work was open world events, and then also Turtle Bay was my jam.
Your baby.
Oh yeah, mine's linked.
Well, that's it. I had other people working it as well, so shout out to all them because it wasn't just me. As much as I'd love to sit here and be like, "Listen, world, I did everything."
Sit here and flex a little bit.
No, there's
only level designer on the project.
Yeah, exactly. I'd be asking for a lot more money. Put it like that if that was the case.
The main reason why I was asking about the underground thing is because of the procedure nature, and if that is PvE content, then it means like it's more of a like narrative part of the game, that it's more furthering into the storyline of the game. And if that is like story content purely, and at the same time like you have these procedural chunks and you have to map out how do you make sure that it's still like a meaningful event that is happening, not just becomes a dungeon in that sense. At least that's how it sounds a little bit if you haven't played it, like me.
No, I mean, you're spot on, mate. It was more the story, the main theme of that DLC was the fact that, okay, you've gone all the way through your section of New York, you start to clear it out. Clearly things are looking on the up. But what's happening is you haven't cleared it out. It's just the enemies have changed their strategy. So they're now trying to cause chaos through the sewers. If you think about, especially New York, I didn't realize this, but they have to clear their train tracks from all the water daily. So if you start to think about how like that, if that starts to stop, if they're trying to tamper with that, all of these, I mean, their sewers and train subway tracks are very, such a winding map when you think about how that all is. So it's changing that. So that was the big theme for us, is we may have cleared it outside, but we're going deeper into the belly of the beasts. And that was the big point of it. So it was an interesting one for narrative as well. And we had a great narrative design team who worked super hard with that. But I think when you're working with procedural generation, it's something that we all had to learn, not just as level design, environment art, like I said, narrative design, gameplay. All of us had to learn that when you're doing procedural, you have to kind of let go for a little bit. You can't, and I'm sure you know this is, when you are placing cover or tweaking the line of sight, you're like, yes, I've tested this. I understand roughly where the player is going to come in. I've focused on it. And procedure generated, you're like, oh yeah, it works in this direction. And then someone will walk past and be like, yeah, but what happens when you come down here? And you're like, God damn it. So you've got to try tweak it around some more and just kind of be a little bit looser and accept that, okay, maybe some sections or some areas are better placed at certain points in your level versus others, and try just balance it out. But especially with narrative, like I said, it was more focusing on a theme rather than, and there is story to it. But I think for us, especially as level design, working heavily with environment art, is that you really want to focus, I guess, on that theme rather than telling a specific story. Because the other thing is, when it's procedurally generated dungeons, they're going to see it again at some point, and they're going to the player's going to start to realize it. So if you leave something too specific, they'll be like, oh, I remember that. And then if they see it over and over again, it becomes less impactful. So it's a fine line to work. And we also had very different variations of these maps as well, whether that be, for example, with like graffiti. We talked about the sewage, there might be a bit of flooding in that area compared to the previous time. So there was things that we tried to do to help decorate it and also make it still feel different. But again, it's about letting go rather than tightly focused.
And it's also about intent, right? Because I see that's a common problem when you tackle procedural generation. We also, in our indie studio, we're making procedure generated roguelike, right? And what I feel like is that of course you want to offer variety, right? So the player is able to clearly see that these are different things that are happening. But on the other hand, you don't want him to feel like this is complete random and has no design intent. Like they are not discovering something another human being placed there on purpose, right?
Yeah.
So how did you counteract that in any way?
Man, that's a good question. I think for us, it was about understanding the variations from it. So for us, we had like a footprint. Say we've got a building or a room, should we say, that's just an example, 30 by 30 meters. So we've got to understand, okay, well, this all, my floor plan looks the same no matter what. So how is it that I'm actually able to make the different variation eat into that space differently? So maybe you have kind of a variation where we use all that 30 meter cubed space, but another time I might just have a part of it just closed off, just some negative space thrown in there, so that way it kind of eats into the footprint. And similar again with, like you said, about like story about things not placed there, is in those different variations we had other layers of story. So you might turn on 1A, which has like a body with some sort of notes on it, or point B where it's just like certain props, like a backpack that was left there by someone. So it was about us trying to mess around and combine with that and make sure we had the systems to do that. But it was, like I said, understanding the space and making sure that, because before we even actually went in and designed anything, we had to like do it all on paper. So really trying to, again, make sure that stuff looked different from your paper design. Obviously things change from your paper design to an editor, but again, seeing if that difference was noticeable enough. Because at first, like, what do you mean? I can't make all this space look different. Because again, you're just trying to get your head around it, and especially from Division, which was a lot more handcrafted, to DLC, which is a lot more, as I said, letting go. So it took some time, but those were kind of some of the ways that we did it. So just messing around with variations and trying to change the overall footprint and layout that we could with it.
How much planning do you do usually before even touching the editor?
I mean, sometimes production will change that. As much as I'd like to say, oh, we have freedom to do as long as we want, it depends on production, right? Sometimes, as we all know, you get longer times to work on different projects. You might get a new level that's come up later in production. They're like, you've got like 3 days, better get on this. But this to this to me was it's not the worst experience I've had, but we won't talk about that because I'll have like Vietnam flashbacks over here. So, but no, like for me, for this one of the best things I ever had was a shout out to my previous lead, Daniel Molnar, who's actually in Berlin. So I don't know if he'll ever hear this, but we shouted him out nonetheless. And he was my lead level designer. And just for example, I was making a part of a sewers section for it. It was me and another guy named Edward Fuller. Sorry, he's a level designer as well. And before he even let us, and this was primarily me because I was still a junior as well at the time, he said to me, he's like, "You're not allowed to touch the editor until you tell me exactly how sewers work." And I was like, "What?" So I had to understand sewers more than I ever wanted to, because as you know, there's a lot of stuff that goes in there and comes out which you don't want to know about. Just so anyone knows, don't ever go swimming in the Hudson River. Just for the record, if you're in New York, please don't. It's not clean. But we learned a lot, and it wasn't until after that I could present to him, okay, this is how a river system flows. This is where it starts. This is where it goes. This is how it's cleaned, etc. And it was because of that I ended up making one of the better levels that my level design director, that ended up being his favorite level. And it's because I had time to plan. And I would recommend, I say that story more to anyone who wants to be a level designer. They take the planning serious, because I made some mistakes growing up as a junior where it's like, oh, the editor's the best bit, I'm going to jump in and make it. No, like slow down, understand it. And we've just talked about narrative for a little bit. That's part of your role as a level designer as well, working with environment art. Well, what's the narrative of this section? What are we trying to sell, and how do we sell it? So I tried to take as much time as I can planning. If anyone goes over to the YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/LevelDesignLobby, you'll see my live stream where I did just an hour long talking about a document that I put together before I even started planning, before I even started blocking out, breaking down. And it was the funniest thing ever, because someone was commenting, "Oh, can we hurry up and get to the editor, please?" And it, I don't blame them for saying that.
Classic.
Yeah, right. But the reason I was doing that is to, again, hopefully people don't make the same mistakes I did, because even now I'm still learning about the best way to plan. I haven't got it figured out. I'm still trying to tweak and fine tune my overall process. So I try spend as much time as I can on it. Obviously, like I said, production can come in. If we did have something for 3 days, maybe a day of that is just pure planning, where I just try to get as much references, understand, talk to everyone who's going to be working on that mission with me. What is it they're after? What's the overall plan here? Understand the mechanics as well. What's the architecture that we need for this space? All of this. And then I'll start to block out. But you should spend a lot of time. And the best thing that, again, Daniel said to me was, I don't even go into the editor until you've got at least 50 images. So that's it. That's minimum. You should probably get more, but that is a minimum that I'm trying to do and trying to hold myself to throughout my career now. So yeah, do spend your time planning, everyone.
In narrative design, we have this rule that is called the 80-20 rule, which is essentially you build 80% of your world to show 20%. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think, this applies to level design as well. I guess if you want to build a believable 20%, right, believable level that makes sense logically, you have to put in the 80% research time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, mate. And I will say, I found a great story of in Romania, there's a lot of people that live in the sewers and they're like doing all these like drugs, and there's this guy who's wearing essentially like a tinfoil hat. I'm not even making this up, but it's like he sprays it with kind of like this silver paint sort of thing, and everyone's attracted to him because that thing is there getting him off high, and everyone who comes near gets contact high, and it's so bizarre. But like I think I threw in an Easter egg of him in there where there was like a foil hat or something in there, but like that. It was funny because I went down this rabbit hole and my lead was like, this isn't the research I meant for you to be doing. So, but you never know what you find.
Yeah. The other day in the Design Den Discord, it's like this Discord by...
Ryan Smith, yes. Yeah.
Are you on there yet? Have you found your way there yet?
Yes, I've just joined it, but Ryan's been on my podcast and he's such a great level designer, and it's another great place for us all to mingle.
Yeah, and he's a cool dude as well.
Oh, that place really exploded.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
Where was I aiming at? Some kind of discussion. Damn, I forgot. Well, worth it.
Was it about research reference? Romanian underground people.
Tinfoil hat.
About the Romanian druggies for sure.
No, I completely forgot, unfortunately. So it was a design discussion about a topic where I would have loved to hear opinion, but it's gone. But at least we got a shout out for Ryan out of it. So
yeah, I'm glad he benefited from it. I'm sure you guys do the same. Yourselves, like research, just gathering references, and when you talked about earlier, mate, with your CounterStrike maps trying to be believable, you mentioned it with your world building. The only way that you make believable spaces or places that feel real is by doing your research first. I think that's key to anything.
Would you be able to, like, that's just a personal question from me, because I would be very interested in that. How exactly does the narrative team working with the level design team, how does this work? How is this pipeline wise?
Yeah. So it depends different studios, right? It's not the same everywhere, because you sometimes have roles in different studios called your mission or quest designers. Sometimes the level designer will fill that role. It all depends on the studio. But regardless if that position is there or not, you should be having a kickoff meeting with all of those team members, all of them, to firstly break down, what is the story of this? What is it we're going for? Kind of the themes, the overall plot. Where does the player start? Where do they end? And as you kind of go through, you should be communicating with them as well, showing them, all right, well, this is, even when you think about player versus NPCs, we'll have stuff like patrols and, enemies occupying that space. But you want to understand your theme of that, because when you're placing your enemies, making sure that not only do the patrols look believable, so they're not just walking to look at a wall and then walk to look at the second wall. They need to be doing something that ties in with the narrative. So if they just start dancing while they're supposed to be at a funeral, that's not believable. So like understanding that and really communicating with them on that level to help sell your space through, their actions, the actions that the player is about to go through. So no, it's constantly communicating again. I think, you guys both know keeping communication constant throughout is one of the hardest things, because the first thing to break if anything breaks. But yeah, it's always about communicating and talking so you understand what's happening in your level.
Yeah, and in your team, of course. Like, if you notice that someone, is getting more closed off, or maybe he's unhappy with something, and then if you're the team lead, or even if he's your junior, I guess, then you getting that out of him and getting him to speak up, and reestablishing that nice feeling of not family like, but that team feeling, that maybe ship's crew, pirate crew feeling. That's very important.
Yeah, mate.
How about technically? Like, what's Sven sent me a screenshot yesterday of a tool he discovered in the Hammer editor. What was that about, Sven, again?
Oh, damn. It's basically because if you build too large of maps in the source 2 editor, it takes forever for it to compile and to render. I don't want to imagine how it takes in Cyberpunk being open world and stuff. But like, there's this thing where you can like mark up a section of the map, and it only compiles and renders that specific section, nothing else. So of course I didn't know that one existed before. So I was always trying to either compile the whole map and then play it, or extract this section and put it in a different map to play it in there. But of course you can use that tool to mark out your little box and then compile it from the space and start in there and test and iterate all the stuff. So it was like a mind-blowing thing where I was thinking, why didn't I discover that before? That would have saved so much time. Yeah, so you never stop learning.
No, that was great that you found that tool in the end, though, right? That's also, another point. We're talking about obviously communicating with each other in different teams, but also the tech that we use is constantly changing. It's very rare that in your career, however long you span with your career in games, will have you working on the same tech. You're going to be working with something new. It's going to change depending on your projects. And that's another thing, right? Like, you got to try and learn all of that, keep on top of it, make sure you've got a great understanding of it. And again, if communication breaks down through either documentation or not being able to find out who created what feature or who can create features, that can soon bite you in the backside. But yeah, another aspect of making games,
Yeah.
What's most important for you in a level editor?
Oh, tool.
Oh gosh.
Because Sven and me have been active on Twitter a little bit, where people are showing off these specific hammer stuff, like physics-based. Like, you can use the physics to place objects in the scene, right? You don't have to do this whole hovering and transforming thing, but you can literally push them around physically to get a more realistic building process. Or
like the prop placement more natural and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh, man. I don't really, it's such a weird one because I'm trying to think about it, because after you just worked on something for so long, you're like, it just feels second nature. I guess I think the most important thing and this is really simple, but for me is making sure that there is like snapping to not only the grid but snapping pieces together. Yeah.
Oh,
like
damn,
that.
yeah.
Just to line it up. I know it's simple, but sometimes some editors don't have it. Some do. Maybe it's harder to find it. But that's a really, really just it's basic, but it's needed for a reason, especially because certain spaces are needed to come to a grid. Not everything needs to snap to the grid. I know that Peter Field did a phenomenal talk about that. But sometimes it is needed. Sometimes it helps with your artist too, and also it helps with establishing your metrics. But I think that's one of the most important ones. And also, the one thing that I'm not a fan of personally in editors is like when everything is hidden away, where I have to go inside a drop down to finally get access to the properties that I'm maybe needing. So if it could just be there, I may have to scroll, but I'll take that over clicking to scroll to click to scroll. Like if it's just there, But there was a great talk at GDC. I can't remember when, but it was talking about, I think it was from a tools programmer, but he was talking, obviously from a level designer. I can't remember, and I'm sorry, I've forgotten his name. But he basically broke down how to save time for devs through your editor choices, and it was such a great talk, because you don't realize how much time you're losing by clicking or
by some redundant actions all the time. No.
And sometimes that's the toughest thing, is figuring that out, because at a certain point you're on a game and you just need to work. Like I said, sometimes your deadlines are tight. You're just like, okay, I need to just get this in here. So despite any flaws or maybe something that you'd like to see improved, like I can't talk about it right now. I've just got to finish it.
Yeah.
But if you're lucky enough to have in your studio a tech level designer, they should be the ones to help push the needs of your engines as well as other things. That's not their only role, but that's one of their roles for sure. So yeah. What about you guys? What are your favorite must-have features as narrative and LDs then?
Sven, go for it.
Oh, that's a good one.
It is, right? It's tough.
For me, the most important thing is that I can get shapes done fast and don't have to do like in Unity. It blows my mind that the Unity editor doesn't have, aside from a board plugin, for example, Pro Builder, doesn't have mesh editing skills that you can get meshes fast. And Hammer is so good at that that you are like super speedy in creating all the different shapes and buildings and structures and stuff, which you then later, of course, can replace with, I don't know, some props or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is like a revelation to me. Also, seeing the step up from the original Source engine to Source 2 and how much they improved on their tools side of things makes everything so much faster and like all the quality of life stuff. Yeah. There's a lot of features in Source 2 actually that I would love to see in Unity, because we're using Unity in my indie team where we're working on a mobile thing on the side.
Awesome.
And having these tools I'm using in Source to do some Alex mods and stuff, having those in Unity as well would speed up so much of the time. Thankfully, we have a tools programmer in our team who makes the coolest tools that I can use then to make the life easier. But yeah, that would probably my pick.
Awesome.
Fast mesh editing.
It's a good one.
Fast mesh editing, yeah, and the maybe terrain blending and that kind of stuff is also very cool or managed very cool in Hammer for level designers. But I don't know. I just want one place where all my variables are exposed. That's what I care about. Like, I don't want fancy, crazy tools. I want them too, but I don't want them as much as I want just one place. This is not possible currently in Unity by default. Yeah, you need someone to program you these kind of tools, right? So for example, when I'm balancing a wave spawn system or an enemy spawner system, or I'm balancing combat values and that kind of stuff, and damage and the complex item progression, I want to be able. I don't want to go to that sword to adjust the sword damage. I don't want to go to the wave manager to adjust the waves, but then I have to go to the enemies to adjust some kind of cooldowns or anything. I want to have one space available where it's like categorically sorted, and I have to unpack essentially the values and nothing else. That would be my dream. Like if you most studios do this with Excel linking, right? You have sheets, you have some kind of data sheets that are linked, and you can just balance them all there. But often in indie teams especially, that's not the case, because you don't have the engine programmer or database programmer who can make those link ups happen. So I would love to see something like that implemented natively in any of the like Unreal and any Unity, any of the common engines that are being used outside of AAA studios. That would be very cool.
Yeah, cool.
And narrative-wise, I don't know if there's like most tools are outside of the engine that are being used, like Artisy.draft, right? I don't know if you've heard about that tool. It's one of the most used narrative design tools. Okay. And then mind map things like Miro or Miro boards and this kind of stuff. I would love to see like a package deal where I don't have to, where I could import my Miro board into the Google Sheets, and the Google Sheets could be imported into Engine. If that all would be in some one-way pipeline, and I didn't have to have 10 different anchor points, because that's the biggest problem in good communication in a team, right? If you have a great level design document, and then you have to transcribe that level design document in like actual what needs to be done from this, what do you, the programmer, what do I need from you to make happen, right? And then there's more and more steps being added, vision documents, and suddenly you have to jump to 5 hoops to find that information that you're looking for. And some mastermind way of having that all in one place, that would be my dream.
You're just gonna let an AI or machine learning thing run over your design document and extract that into a Jira task.
That would be great. If that would be possible with no mistakes.
Yeah, well, hopefully someone's going to make a fortune, designing these tools and could sell it for millions, because we gave them great ideas, so you're welcome, future millionaires. We say thank you.
Yeah, give us some royalties.
I should at least credit us here.
we mentioned like crunch and negative things earlier, so I want to go like people always remember those because of negative cognitive bias, right? But I want to like, do you remember some of the coolest moments of your career? Something that was really that stayed in your mind that was awesome and positive?
Oh man, it's so weird when you say cool in game dev, right? Because of the fact, like, when someone says cool, no, like it's super cool. But sometimes when someone says cool, you're like, I don't know. I'm a big anime fan, so I'm watching like, oh yeah, when someone suddenly turns Super Saiyan, that's cool. And then I'm just typing on a keyboard. It's not like. So, no, I mean, look, what we do, like we said, is super cool. This is a phenomenal career for anyone in here for sure. And, we all appreciate it. I think for me, okay, so there's two. There's two for me. So I'll talk about this. The first one was, this was like a moment like I really stepped up at Ubisoft and it was clear, like I was like, fuck, I've got my role. So for most of Division, I was kind of like a technical level designer. Not always, but I was in that realm. I was taking under the great tutelage of Simon Cooper, who is a phenomenal technical level designer. He is the shiz. If anyone ever gets a chance to work with him, insult him for me, because that's the best way that I show love to this man. But no,
it's the best way to get his respect.
Exactly.
the banter into the house.
My favorite moment was he went away on holiday, or he'd gone somewhere else, and because he'd gone, this isn't a cool moment, this is just a funny moment.
Yeah,
I put like a piece of paper on the back of my monitor saying temp technical level design lead. And so someone like took the picture back at him and he's just like messed me. He's like, what are you doing? So it was a fun way to mess with him. But it was at a time when basically a system had changed for us that would change basically all the open world events need to be done to optimize the way that it was ran. But we had a deadline that needed to be done in like 2 days. And we only actually had a day and a half because we had a half day, the whole studio, to go to attend this event on that day. So I had to go around, find the information, and go through everyone's events and try like just change it so no one else could be distracted from their work. It was just a moment where like I said, I stepped up, need to be done, and like I didn't ask for anyone's help because I just was proactive enough to be like, okay, this is what it is, these are the problems, this is what it fixes, and this is the change that needs to be made. So that was like my first cool moment, and it was nice because I think people don't always realize, especially when you're working in game dev. It's a great quote, and I'm sorry, I've forgotten who it's from. I must have name dropped 700 people in this one, just trying to show love.
That's okay.
Everyone follow me. Just follow me. Don't listen to anyone else. Jesus, no. They say like 50% of your job is obviously doing, level design, narrative design, environmental, animation, audio, all of that. The other 50% is understanding why people need help doing theirs and what's troubling them, so that you can best get the information or the tech or whatever you need from them to help you with your level design. And I think that's a quote that stuck with me there. And then the second one, this is when I was at an indie studio. We made a game called Pygmy Panic, which was an augmented reality game. And the thing that we were aiming to do was to essentially we were trying to bring your imaginary friend to life where you had to protect them. So it was a tower defense game where there's this little pygmy who was, fun little character, have some fun, really energetic. And these kind of brute-like characters were trying to kidnap the pygmy friend. And you'd move around the map with your iPad and try to take them out, shoot, move around. We had stuff like trees, clouds that would block you. So it forced you to move. And we were presenting this game at this little festival. And this little girl who was playing was autistic somewhere on the spectrum. And her grandfather came over and he said, "When's the game out? Because I haven't seen her this like engaged and energetic in a long time." And you could see it was just like the fact that she clearly understood it. She was having a great time, and it really touched, this family for it. And to see him being so excited by her joy was, those are the moments that you don't always see. And it was just that one will always stick with me forever. So that was, yeah.
Oh, damn.
I've got goosebumps.
That sounds really sweet.
Yeah.
But I'm a sucker for moments like that. So
yeah,
damn,
I think
that's cool.
it's one of those, though, isn't it, guys? Like, there's part of the reason you want to make games. It's not always just for the cool explosions or the big moments. You want to make it where it actually touches someone on a personal level, and that's always,
for sure,
one for us all. So, I mean, I'll ask the same question back to you two gentlemen. What's been your favorite and most proud moment?
Most proud. I also want to say the thing why I'm in gaming. Like we talked about on the podcast before, of course, but the story that you just told, it's similar for me. And like I'm in gaming because of the emotional, like seeing that emotional reaction that I saw in myself when I was playing games like Ratchet and Clank with my brother all those years back, right? All these experience that I like playing with my brother, playing all these games over the last 20 years. That's all been my motivation to like craft these kind of experiences that can be experienced by people out there and bond people, bring them closer together. That's exactly the reason why I'm in games as well. So I really felt that. I felt that moment where you saw those eyes light up of the father, right? Was it the father of the girl? Grandfather.
Yeah.
Saw his eyes light up. That's really awesome. All right, yeah.
Having these moments that emotionally touch you with the games are basically also what pushed me over the edge to actually see this as a valid and viable career path to do something with games. Because like playing something like The Last of Us 8 years ago and seeing the amount of realism in the characters and the amount of interaction you have with them, and actually having like real people there not playing with you, like you are playing these kind of real people that seem real to you, and seeing that games can be able to pull off creating such an emotional connection to you on a story and character level was just so mind-blowing to me. And that games can be more than, let's say it in quotation marks, just arcadey Pac-Man experiences. Just gamified stuff, having an emotional layer to everything is something that was so touching me a lot back then and pushed me over the edge as well. So yeah, there's basically, if we all share our stories, then at this point that would be mine.
And emergent stories are, Max, you mentioned that in your book as well. You mentioned memorable moments, right? All these battlefield kind of moments that stay in your mind when you see them, that you will remember years to come, and you actually talk about with your friends, these emergent story moments. This is what we live for, right? And this is the hardest thing to plan for.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's hard to deliver on as well, especially like, something that's not always talked about is the amount of iteration that goes into a game, right? And then also the amount of time, some games can, we've all heard stories about some games taking 10 years, for example. Like, the amount of emotions in that game. But like Last Guardian, I think took almost 10 years as well. And that game made me cry at the end. And I'll ask you guys which games have made you cry in a second. So get ready to get the tissues out.
Okay, tissues ready.
But that was one for me where I think, because the ending was so good, like just it ended correctly. I was crying right at the end. And I just think, another great story, just a couple just to throw them off as well, like God of War 2018, that had a phenomenal story as well. That made me not necessarily cry, but like it made me understand a lot more about my dad than previously. And I think that was a very good moment. Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, where Zack gives his life away. Spoilers, but that was always going to be one for me, because he gets a letter from his girlfriend Aerith, because he doesn't realize how long he's been away, and she's in the letter she says, "I haven't seen you. Like, are we okay? Are you okay?" And basically says she's going to essentially move on with her life. And like that was one. I'm even getting goosebumps now. I was just like, like this guy's just trying to survive through his life, and yet he's forgotten someone else who's so crucial to it. And I wonder, when you're doing that, when you're crafting these really emotionally impactful games and iterating, when you first see it, or you first read the script or see that cutscene, or play that final moment, you're like, oh, this is it. But when you must see that 3 years on, for example, I wonder if you start questioning, is this emotionally impactful? That must be a tough thing to go through. It's always something I think about. But my question back to you guys then, what games have made you cry or emotionally impacted you?
I can definitely start with one. which is an older title. It's also one of my favorite games. It's Mafia from 2000.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and I played it when I was way too young for it to play because it's like I wasn't 18 back then. But I played it together with my brother as well all the way through. Watched him play, took turns sometimes, and it's kind of like, of course, Goodfellas as a game, basically, and also the ending and how everything led up to the climax. So, of course, spoiler territory as well, but I guess it's okay for an 18-year-old game to say that. That, of course, the main character dies in the end, but before he dies and gets shot, he loses basically all of his friends and gets betrayed by his friends, and also betrays his previous alliance, basically, and all that coming together in the last hour of the game was such a high intensity and jam-packed, eventful finale of a game that I was super stunned when the game was over, because I didn't expect the game at all to kill off the main character after they pulled off all the other stuff that happened before.
Yeah.
And I was thinking like, no, it's over, fuck. And then I was super emotional by that scene for sure. So that would be the one that springs to mind for me. What about you, Sam?
I'm not gonna dive deep into the crying aspect because I'm a sucker for loyalty moments, and they always get pee into my eyes. Maybe one was actually with Sven. There was a period in our life where we both lived in Munich, best friends together in Munich, and we were working for a German TV channel, and we played the game. Give me the name shortly, Sven.
Life is Strange.
Life is Strange. We played Life is Strange together after work. Every time we met after work, we always got some honey meat or some fruits or snacks. And that game emotionally hit me so hard. Like even today, when I'm in a sad space or whatever, or I just want to feel again, I listen to that soundtrack, and that brings me back.
Oh, that also jump started our joint playlist. We actually have a playlist on Spotify where we just add songs for each other,
emotional
not
songs.
for each other, like emotional songs and stuff. And then it has been created like 5 years ago already, and got kind of long. But like half of the songs are from that game soundtrack because that was so impactful at the time. So I was also
great shout. I haven't played that. I played that in a while, but yeah, I haven't played. Have you guys played number 2? Because I agree. Number 1 was so well done, and I will say, like the opening for that game, where it transitions, where she puts her headphones on, and she's walking through the school. That to me is one of my favorite like openings, because it just made me feel like I was back. I mean, I was in England, so it is slightly different, but I was like, oh, wow, like this teenage angst of, I've got my kind of melancholy rock on. I'm, feeling kind of alone right now. All this stuff's happening around me, but I'm just listening to my headphones. Yeah, great shout. Great shout with that one, guys.
Yeah, big feelings. And coincidentally, as you mentioned, your most impressionable intro to a game is also the second game I want to mention, and that's BioShock, the series in total. But BioShock Infinite has a very unique intro. I love that intro, right? Where everything is so rosy and beautiful and nice. But I've played the first 2 parts over the years when I was a kid with my brother, right? With the "Would you kindly" moments, and I'm a huge sucker for the double reveals, like the big narrative double twist that is not cheesy but well done and nicely incorporated, and where the player is fooled in a way. But then playing Infinite and the end of Infinite and the end of Burial at Sea 2, like the second DLC, where the stories, I'm not going to go into too much spoiler, but just saying where all the stories are tied together. There was just 48 hours of me and my brother being completely silent and being just stumped by what we just experienced. And I will never forget that.
Because I haven't played Burial at Sea. I finished Infinite, but I didn't finish that one. So, okay, I've got my Switch. I need to, need no more reason to pick it up and play it there. Then we'll do. Yeah,
please finish the second Burial at Sea. Big recommendation.
All right, awesome.
Yeah, it ties everything up very nicely.
Damn, so emotional. I love this. This episode had everything from banter to humor to design deep dive. And maybe before we close out, do you have like a dream game that you want to make, that you want to work on? Like if you wouldn't be at Cyberpunk right now?
Yeah, I've already got it working on it. It's it's something that's very very close to me. I'll just the name the work in progress tile is called agape. For anyone who's familiar with Greek philosophy, there is 4 types of love. This is the final form, its truest form. Where it is only done. You only reach that through truly, wanting to love for the sake of giving your love, not receiving anything, whether it be for friendship or sexual or anything like that. It's the truest form, they believed at the time. It's that I don't want to talk about too much, but it's about relationships and understanding them and us, because I think as humans, I'm sure you guys know yourself, like whether that be through friendships or through romantic relationships, we never really teach each other or kids about what makes a healthy and strong relationship. And sadly people do go into abusive relationships, whether it be through physical or verbal or mental, and we don't always understand the issues within ourselves too. People go in expecting someone to fix the problems with them, and that's never going to happen. It's understanding that. So I want to. That's what this game is going to be about for me: is teaching stuff about yourself, learning to love yourself, then having a partner join you through that game. Very very inspired by stuff like ICO and that of Journey and these sort of things. So it's in progress. It'll be another 10 years before you hear anything about it, just due to time as a one-man team on this. But that's where my progress is right now. I've got the character, I've got the main mechanics, I've got my meaty design doc to understand how it will all come together. But that's where it is right now, and it's something I'm looking forward to, and just hoping that I can deliver on when the time comes. So yeah,
people will for sure not gonna miss that if they follow you on Twitter to close it out in a smooth way. You can of course find Max at Max Pears on Twitter if you want to follow.
Yeah,
and of course check out his book.
Yes, do check out my book, which is coming out. If it's not out by the time this one is, it'll be out by the 30th of July. It's about level design, the combat involved with level design. You can get this whether it be physical or an ebook copy. And yeah, please come check it out, guys. Look forward to you getting a chance to read that.
Will it actually be available in globally or only in limited?
And also in physical form?
Yep. So it'll be available in physical form, and it will be available globally as well. There will be, there's a lot of students who I know follow me over in Russia, so there will be a Russian copy later. As for right now, there's solely just an English version, but we might translate it depending on how well it does. But if you do want to support, me, myself, to maybe even fund Agape in the future, and the best way to get it is the ebook, which is on Gumroad. Most of the money will go to me. Or if you want the physical copy, which I do obviously want you all to get, you can head to the Lulu store on there, because more, again, the profit will come to me. But it is available on other stores like Amazon and what have you. But if you do want to support this smooth jazz voice, then please check out those.
Exactly. Please do that, guys. A wonderful human being and kind enough to banter with us on the podcast. We pushed all the socials. Anything else to say? CDPR, a book, a podcast, level design community. What's next for you, Max?
Oh man, probably a break. I need to finish Final Fantasy VII and Last of Us 2. That's what's next. So then I can come back with better and more exciting stuff. So that's me, guys. Vanish into the woodlands. That's my plan, guys.
Fantastic. Thank you for coming on. Nice. This was really amazing.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Sven, any last words?
Can close out with our socials, of course. If you want to follow us, as always, on Twitter, it's at Idiots Industry. And on Instagram, it's Industry Idiots.
Check them out.
Thank you, Max. All right, glad you were here.
Other than that, thanks to Max, of course, and also a final word on the book. I really enjoyed reading it yesterday, and from a visual perspective, and also from the in-depth stuff that is in there. I think it's very nicely presented in very easily understandable with the explanation on the left, and then the visualization of the point you're trying to make on the right. It's very easy to get, and a very good foundation for everyone who's trying to get into combat design. So I'm looking forward to, as you're teasing it as a level design series, I'm looking forward to the next part.
The next installment, yes.
Oh. Brilliant. No, thank you, guys.
Yeah, get it, guys. Thank you for coming on, and the traditional bye.
Bye.
Bye.